Eleanor, the quiet woman they erased, walked back into the opulent wedding venue. She had nothing but a simple dress and her unshakable dignity. Her billionaire husband, Richard, stood at the altar, a man of absolute power, completely unaware she'd accepted the invitation. When he saw her standing in the doorway, he didn't feel anger or scorn. He felt defeat. His hands, the hands that controlled billions, began to tremble violently. In that instant, Eleanor finally understood. Her quiet absence had been more potent than his entire fortune. The sight of her steady presence proved the true, immense power of walking away. The billionaire was shaking, and the simple woman was strong. "Hi, my beautiful family. May the Almighty cover you with endless mercy, bless your homes with peace, and crown your hearts with strength that never fades. May He grant every woman dignity that cannot be shaken, every man wisdom that inspires, and every child a future full of light. If your heart is true like the video, if your love is real, right, present with my brother, revenge with Dina Chi, every like, every comment is not just support. It is the heartbeat that keeps this family alive." Let us begin with Eleanor. She was 60 years old. She was not a complicated woman. Eleanor lived a simple life. Even when her husband, Richard, became a man with $1 billion, Eleanor stayed simple. She did not like the big fancy parties. She did not like the cold, hard marble floors of their huge, empty house. Eleanor loved the soft wool blanket on her favorite chair. She loved the simple, warm smell of baking bread in the kitchen. She loved the sound of the rain outside her window. That was her whole world. That was her true peace. She grew up in a small town, a town where neighbors knew each other's names, a town where love was shown through simple acts, like sharing a cup of tea. She brought that simple heart with her into her very rich marriage. Richard, her husband, was the opposite. Richard was loud. Richard was important. Richard's whole life was about numbers. It was about bigger deals and faster cars. He was a billionaire. A very big word, billionaire. Eleanor never cared for the money. The money was just a cold paper barrier between her and Richard. But there was one thing, one single, beautiful thing that kept Eleanor in that big, cold house. That thing was her daughter. Her precious, lovely daughter, Clara. Clara was the sunlight in Eleanor's life. Clara was the only reason Eleanor woke up happy every single morning. The love between Eleanor and Clara was not just a little love. It was a deep, powerful, ocean-deep love. A love that cannot be broken by money or by distance. This love was the real, solid foundation of Eleanor's entire world. When Clara was a little girl, Eleanor was her everything. When Clara scraped her knee, she did not run to the servants. She ran to her mother, Eleanor. Eleanor would clean the scrape. She would put a small, simple Band-Aid on it, and she would kiss the hurt away. That kiss was always better than any expensive medicine. Clara loved to sit in the kitchen with her mother. The big, fancy kitchen. But Eleanor made it warm. She made it smell of cookies, not of polished steel. Clara would sit on the tall stool and watch her mother bake. Eleanor would let Clara stir the chocolate batter, just a little bit, and Clara's smile would fill the whole room with light. "Mommy," Clara would ask, her voice a tiny, sweet song, "why do you always bake the best cookies?" And Eleanor would look at her daughter's bright eyes. She would say very softly, "Because, my little love, I bake them with my whole heart, and my whole heart belongs to you." This was their language, a language of small, quiet moments, a language of warm hugs that lasted a long time. It was not a language of big expensive gifts. Richard always gave Clara diamonds and fancy electronic toys. Clara would say, "Thank you, Dad," but she would always put the new toy down and go find her mother in the garden. Eleanor taught Clara about simple beauty. She taught her how to recognize a robin's song. She taught her how to plant a tiny seed and watch it grow into a big, strong flower. She taught her that the most valuable things in life are the ones you cannot buy. Richard did not understand this. Richard saw Eleanor's simple ways as a weakness. He saw her love for Clara as soft. He thought Eleanor was too gentle for his important world. As Clara grew older, Richard started to try and pull her away. He wanted Clara to be like him. He wanted her to wear expensive clothes and talk about important business things. He wanted her to forget the small, quiet beauty that Eleanor showed her. When Clara was in her late teens, the pulling became stronger. Richard would take Clara on trips to faraway places, trips to meet very important, very rich people. When they came back, Clara would seem different. A little colder, a little more distant. It was like a tiny, fragile shield had been put up between mother and daughter. Eleanor noticed everything. A mother always notices. She noticed the way Clara stopped asking to bake cookies. She noticed the way Clara stopped wearing the simple necklace Eleanor had given her. Instead, Clara wore a very big, sparkly diamond necklace from her father. Eleanor felt a deep, heavy sadness settle in her chest. It was a sadness that came not from being ignored by her husband. She was used to that. It was a sadness that came from seeing her daughter, her one true love, starting to drift away. She did not say anything. Eleanor was a woman of quiet strength. She believed that true love finds its way back. She waited. She continued to make the house warm. She continued to put simple, fresh flowers on the kitchen table, just in case Clara came by. Then, the month came. The month that changed everything. The month that forced Eleanor to understand the true measure of her own dignity. Clara turned 25. Richard threw the biggest party of the year. A party for people with names that mattered. The house was full of flashing lights and cold laughter. Eleanor helped the staff prepare everything. She chose a simple, elegant dress. A dress that did not scream money, but whispered class. She was so excited to see Clara, her daughter, her one and only. Eleanor saw Clara across the vast ballroom. Clara was talking to a group of very serious, rich men. She looked beautiful, stunning even. She looked like her father's daughter, not Eleanor's. Eleanor walked over, her heart beating a happy rhythm. She wanted to hug her daughter. She wanted to tell her happy birthday. She got close, just a few steps away. Clara looked up. Her eyes met Eleanor's eyes. And for a second, a very long, painful second, Clara's eyes were blank. No warmth, no love, just a cold, polite blankness. Richard saw Eleanor approaching. He put a big, heavy hand on Clara's shoulder. He pulled Clara slightly, very slightly, closer to him. It was a small movement, but it was like a massive wall being built right in front of Eleanor. Richard looked at Eleanor. His face was not angry. It was worse than angry. It was dismissive. He gave a small, quick shake of his head. It was a signal that said, "Go away. You do not belong in this important conversation. You are in the way." Eleanor stopped. Her happy heart shattered into a million sharp, tiny pieces. She could feel the blood drain from her face. She stood frozen. Clara did not smile. Clara did not even nod. Clara simply turned her head back to the important man. She acted as if Eleanor was a lamppost, a piece of furniture, a thing that did not matter. Eleanor was erased, right there, in the middle of her own home, by the two people who were supposed to love her the most. She turned around very slowly. She walked away from the flashing lights. She walked away from the cold laughter. She went up to her quiet bedroom. She closed the door, very, very gently. That night was the start of the month. A month of silence. A month of being shut out. Richard and Clara continued their life in the big house. They talked to the staff. They talked to their friends. They talked to each other. They did not talk to Eleanor. When Eleanor tried to speak to Clara, Clara would say she was too busy. "I have a big meeting, Mom." Or, "I have to catch a flight, Mom." Always an excuse. Always a wall. Richard was even colder. He treated her like a mistake. A small, unimportant mistake that he had made a long time ago. For 30 long days, Eleanor lived in her own house like a ghost. She cooked her own simple meals in a small side kitchen. She read her books. She watered her flowers. She waited for one simple word. One small hug. One sign that her 30 years of love meant something. The word never came. The hug never happened. The sign was never shown. On the 30th day, Eleanor sat in her favorite wool chair. The sun was setting. The big, empty house felt like a tomb. She closed her eyes. She thought about her daughter's cold, blank eyes at the party. She thought about her husband's quick, dismissive head shake. A quiet, powerful understanding came over her. It was not a feeling of sadness anymore. It was a feeling of truth. They do not need me, she realized. They think I'm too soft. They think I have no worth. And then, another, stronger thought came. A thought full of that quiet dignity she carried in her heart. I do not need them to tell me who I am. My worth is not a number in Richard's bank account. My worth is in the kind of woman I am. That was the moment. The very moment Eleanor decided to choose herself. She decided that she would not wait for a single sign of love that was never going to come. She decided that she had given enough. It was a very, very hard choice. The hardest choice of her whole 60 years. To leave the home she had known. To leave the physical presence of her beloved daughter. She stood up from her chair. She went to her closet. She took out a single, small suitcase. A simple, worn suitcase. She did not take the expensive clothes Richard had bought for her. She did not take the jewelry. She only took her most simple dresses. She took the old photo album of Clara as a small girl. The album with the scraped knee pictures. And she took the simple, copper-colored wedding band from her finger. The band that was given to her a long, long time ago, before the $1 billion. She placed it on Richard's side of the enormous bed. A quiet, final statement. She walked out of the bedroom. She walked down the cold, marble stairs. She walked past the empty ballroom. She walked out the front door. She did not look back. The sun had set completely. Eleanor walked away from the big, silent house and into the simple, dark night. She had nothing but her dignity. She had nothing but the memory of her daughter's true, simple love. She was free. Free from the coldness of their disregard. Free from the shame of being erased. 5 years would pass. 5 years of quiet living, of finding her own small, warm home again. 5 years of healing. And then, one morning, the phone rang. The number was blocked. Eleanor almost did not answer. But something told her to pick it up. "Hello," she said, her voice clear and strong. And on the other end, she heard the sound of Richard's voice. Her billionaire ex-husband. The man who had helped erase her. His voice was not loud and commanding like it used to be. It was small. It was nervous. "Eleanor," he said. Just her name. "What do you want, Richard?" she asked. Straightforward. No drama. Richard took a breath. A shaky breath. "It's Clara. She's getting married. Next week. And you are invited." Eleanor felt a huge jolt. Clara. Getting married. Her daughter. The thought of seeing her again. The thought of walking back into that life. "Why are you calling me, Richard?" she asked again, her heart pounding a heavy beat. "Because," Richard said, his voice dropping even lower, "because she is her mother. And because she insisted." A strange new feeling filled Eleanor. Not fear, not sadness, something close to quiet power. "I will be there," Eleanor said simply, and she hung up the phone. She did not know what she would find. She did not know what awaited her. But she knew one thing for certain. The simple woman who walked out 5 years ago was not the same woman who was about to walk back in. She had found the strength she never knew she had. And that strength, that simple, quiet dignity, was more powerful than any $1 billion. This is where the true story begins. The story of Eleanor's quiet comeback. The moment she would make a billionaire tremble. The moment she would see the real power of walking away. 5 years is a long time. It is a time for the soil to heal after a storm. It is a time for the quiet strength to grow. For Eleanor, those 5 years were not empty years. They were years full of becoming. Years full of finding the real Eleanor again. The Eleanor who was not defined by Richard's money. The Eleanor who was not hurt by Clara's coldness. When she first left, she did not go far. She went to a small town. A town much like the one she grew up in. A town where the people smiled easily. A town where a simple cup of tea was a true welcome. She rented a small, very simple house. A house with a sunny kitchen and a little garden where she could grow her own flowers. The house did not have marble floors. It had warm, simple wood floors that creaked slightly when she walked. The sound was comforting. It was the sound of a home, not a mansion. She found a small, simple job, working a local bakery. She loved the job. The smell of the fresh bread every morning was a balm to her soul. A healing scent. She talked to the customers. Simple conversations. Conversations about the weather, about the best way to bake a pie, about the simple things that truly matter. No one in this new town knew she was the ex-wife of a billionaire. No one knew she had a powerful, rich daughter. She was just Eleanor, the quiet, kind lady with the warm smile and the gentle hands. The woman who made the best cinnamon rolls in the county. This was her new life. A life of quiet dignity. A life of true worth. She never tried to contact Clara. That was the hardest part. The silence felt like a heavy, constant pressure on her heart. A mother's love never dies. It just waits. It just hopes. She kept the photo album close. She looked at the pictures of little Clara often. The one with the scraped knee. The one with chocolate batter all over her face. She prayed for Clara. She prayed that her daughter would find true happiness. The real, simple happiness that money cannot buy. She prayed that Clara would remember the language of the small, quiet moments. Richard tried to call her once. About a year after she left. A simple, short call. He asked if she wanted a monthly allowance. A big amount of money. Eleanor said no. A quiet, firm no. "I do not need your money, Richard," she said, very clearly. "I only ever wanted your love, and Clara's love. And since you cannot give me the real thing, I do not want the fake thing that comes in the form of cash." He did not call again. She had truly walked away. She had truly chosen her dignity over his dollars. When Richard called this time, 5 years later, the shock was immense. Clara's wedding. The word wedding hit her heart like a physical blow. It meant her little girl was starting a new life, and Clara wanted her mother there. Because she insisted. That was Richard's phrase. That phrase was everything. It was the small, fragile crack in the wall of silence. It meant Clara, the powerful, rich young woman, still held a tiny, small space for her simple mother. Eleanor did not rush. She did not scream with happiness. She remained quiet, strong. She knew that returning to that world would be hard. It would be cold, but she had to go. For her daughter. To show Clara that a mother's love is always there. She chose her dress carefully. Not a new dress. Not an expensive dress. She wore a simple, beautiful navy blue dress she had owned for many years. A dress that fit her now, not because of the cost, but because it made her feel strong. She wore no jewelry, except a simple silver chain. She took the small suitcase, the same one she had used 5 years ago. This time, she was not running away. She was walking back in with a strength that was new, a strength that was simple, a strength that was true. The day of the wedding arrived. Eleanor took a train, a simple, quiet journey. She did not want Richard to send a fancy car. She did not want his help. She wanted to arrive on her own 2 feet. The venue was immense, a giant estate, gates of black iron that were taller than any man, security guards in black suits. The whole place shouted money. It screamed power. It was the world Eleanor had left behind. She walked up to the gates. The guard looked at her. He looked at her simple dress and her quiet demeanor. He looked her up and down. He almost dismissed her. "I am Eleanor," she said, her voice clear and gentle. "I am here for Clara's wedding." He checked his list. He looked surprised. He let her in. She walked up the long, winding driveway. The sun was shining. The air was crisp. She felt every single step. Every step was a step away from her past. Every step was a step toward her daughter. She reached the main entrance. 2 large, polished mahogany doors. They were the kind of doors that felt heavy with history, heavy with money. She paused. She took a slow, deep breath. "My dignity is my weapon," she whispered to herself. "My love for Clara is my shield." She pushed the door open. The room inside was filled with light, filled with hundreds of people in expensive clothes. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and wealth. Eleanor stood there, just inside the door. She was simple, she was quiet, and she was completely ignored. The guests were looking toward the front. The ceremony was about to begin. Richard was standing there by the altar, tall, important, the billionaire. And then, Richard turned his head. He looked straight toward the door. He looked straight at Eleanor. The noise of the room faded away for Richard. All the flashing lights, all the important people, all the money. It all became quiet. Because standing in his doorway was the woman he had erased. The woman he thought was weak. The woman who walked away with nothing but her own true heart. Richard's face went white. White as the driven snow. His eyes went wide. He started to tremble. His hands, the hands that signed billion-dollar deals, the hands that held all the power in his world, those hands began to shake, like a leaf in the cold wind. Shaking, violently shaking. Eleanor saw it. She saw the trembling. And in that very moment, she finally understood. She finally understood the true power of walking away. The power was not in the revenge. The power was in the simple truth. Her absence had been greater than his entire fortune. Her simple dignity was more powerful than his massive pride. Richard could not move. He could not speak. Then, a voice cut through the silence. A young woman's voice. A voice Eleanor knew better than her own. "Mom," Clara said. Clara was standing off to the side, waiting for her entrance. She saw her mother. She saw her beautiful, quiet, strong mother. And Clara smiled. A real smile. The true, simple smile that Eleanor remembered from the kitchen. The smile from the little girl who loved her mother's cookies. It was a smile that promised everything. A smile that spoke the language of love. A love that had waited 5 long years. Eleanor smiled back. A warm, strong, mother's smile. She walked slowly, quietly, down the aisle toward her daughter. She was not a guest. She was not an ex-wife. She was the mother of the bride. She had come home, not to the mansion, but to her daughter's heart. Richard watched her. He could not stop his hands from shaking. He had everything in the world, but he was trembling. And Eleanor, the woman with nothing, was steady and strong. The wedding began, but for Richard, the real drama had already unfolded. It was the drama of truth. It was the drama of a quiet woman who had won back her whole world. And Eleanor, standing beside her daughter, felt nothing but the pure, deep warmth of a love that had survived the storm. A love that was stronger than any $1 billion. The minister began to speak. The music began to play. But all Eleanor heard was the quiet, sweet song of her daughter's love. A love that had finally come back home. The wedding ceremony was a blur of silk and rich laughter. But for Eleanor, standing next to her daughter, everything else was just background noise. She watched Clara. She saw the happy shine in her daughter's eyes. This shine was different from the cold blankness of 5 years ago. This shine was real. It was warm. Richard was still trembling. He stood across the aisle, a powerful man defeated by a single woman's presence. He tried to hide it. He tried to grip the edge of the altar. But Eleanor saw the slight, uncontrolled movement of his fingers. He had erased her, but he could not erase her quiet power. The minister spoke important words about love and forever. But Eleanor was focused on the groom. His name was Marcus. Marcus was not what Eleanor expected. Not at all. When Eleanor first heard the word billionaire husband, she pictured a man like Richard. Loud, important, maybe cold. She pictured a man who only cared about his own success. But Marcus was different. Marcus was tall, yes. He was handsome, yes. He wore an expensive suit, of course. But there was something in his eyes. Something Eleanor knew. It was kindness. A simple, true kindness. He did not look at Clara like a prize. He looked at her like a home. When Marcus looked at Clara, his eyes were soft. He did not talk a lot. When he did speak, his voice was gentle. He spoke simple words. He did not sound like a man who signed billion-dollar deals. He sounded like a man who might help a neighbor fix a broken fence. This was a surprise. A wonderful, quiet surprise. During the vows, a moment happened. A tiny moment that only a mother would notice. Clara was saying her promise to Marcus. Her voice was strong, but her hand, the one holding Marcus's hand, gave a small, nervous squeeze. A simple, shaky sign of fear. Marcus felt it. He stopped his own words. He did not look at Richard. He did not look at the guests. He looked only at Clara. He gave her hand a gentle, slow squeeze back. And he smiled. A very small, very sincere smile. A smile that said, "I am here. You are safe." Clara took a deep breath. She smiled back. And she finished her promise. Eleanor watched this small exchange. And she felt a tear prick her eye. Not a tear of sadness. A tear of recognition. This Marcus, he was a good man. He was a simple, true heart in a complicated, rich world. Clara had found a true love. Not a business partner. Not a big name. A simple, true heart. Later, after the vows, during the reception, Richard came over to Eleanor. He walked stiffly. His pride was battling his fear. "Eleanor," he said. His voice was thick. "Richard," she replied. Her voice was calm. She was still holding the power. "I see you came," he managed to say. A stupid, empty sentence. "Clara asked me to," Eleanor said. That was the whole truth. He looked around the room. At his guests. At his money. He was trying to find his footing. "You look well," he said. A lie. He meant, "You look strong." "I am well," Eleanor said. "I found my peace, Richard, in a very small, simple place." Richard flinched. The word simple was a weapon to him. "You should not have walked out," he whispered. "You should have talked to me." "I did not walk out, Richard. You and Clara shut me out. I just left the empty space you made for me." Her words were soft, but they were true steel. He looked down at his still shaking hands. He wanted to say something important, something powerful, but nothing came out. Then, Marcus came over. The groom. "Eleanor," he said warmly. He reached out his hand to her. Not a cold shake. A warm, open grasp. Marcus, she replied, taking his hand. His handshake was honest, strong and kind. Richard stepped back slightly. The energy of the conversation changed. Marcus did not fear Richard. He did not even seem to notice Richard's importance. Clara has told me so much about you, Marcus said. His eyes looked right into Eleanor's. She told me about the cinnamon rolls and the small garden. Eleanor felt her heart jump. The cinnamon rolls, the small garden. These were her secrets. Her simple, true things. Things Richard had always dismissed. Things Clara had never spoken of in years. She remembers the good things, Eleanor whispered. She never forgot them, Eleanor, Marcus said, his voice lowering, making the moment just between the two of them. She treasures them. She showed me the photo album, the one with the scraped knee pictures. Eleanor looked at Marcus. And then, she knew the secret. The quiet, wonderful secret of this man. You are not like the rest of them, are you, Marcus? She asked. Marcus smiled, a simple, beautiful smile. I love simple things, Eleanor. I love truth. And I love your daughter. And she told me that the most truthful, most real part of her is you. That is why I asked her to insist you come. I needed you here. This was the closure Eleanor needed. Not a diamond ring. Not an apology from Richard. It was the simple, direct confirmation that her daughter, Clara, had grown up and remembered the truth. She remembered the source of her real happiness. Eleanor's eyes watered again. Thank you, Marcus. Marcus put a protective hand on Clara's shoulder. Clara leaned into his touch. It was a picture of simple, true connection. Richard watched them. He saw the genuine warmth. He saw the love that his money could never buy. He saw the connection that he had destroyed. Richard realized Marcus was not a powerful business partner he could control. Marcus was a quiet, strong man who loved Eleanor's simple daughter. And Marcus had brought Eleanor back, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of Clara's true self. Marcus was rich, yes, but he was rich in a quiet way, rich in a way of kindness. Richard, the billionaire, suddenly felt very, very poor. He felt poor in love, poor in truth, and utterly defeated by the quiet strength of the two simple hearts standing before him. He had erased Eleanor, but now Eleanor had walked back in, and she had walked back in on the arm of a good man who loved her daughter's quiet past. The simple parts, the best parts. Eleanor smiled at Richard, not a cruel smile, a smile of mercy. I am happy for Clara, Richard, she said, her voice gentle. She has found a good man, a man who sees her real heart. Richard could not answer. He just stood there, shaking, a man lost in his own massive, empty success. Eleanor had won, not by fighting, but by walking away and finding her own true value. The reception was loud. The music was important and big, but Eleanor did not hear the noise anymore. She heard only the quiet rhythm of her victory, a victory of the heart. She watched Clara and Marcus dance, a simple dance. They were not showing off for the important people. They were just happy, truly, deeply happy. Eleanor was standing by a pillar, quietly observing, a glass of sparkling water in her hand. She felt a gentle touch on her arm. It was Clara, the bride, her beautiful daughter. Clara's eyes were shining. She looked at Eleanor not as a guest, but as her whole world. Mom, Clara said. Her voice was steady, but full of emotion. My precious girl, Eleanor replied. She reached up and gently touched Clara's cheek. The skin was soft. The touch was real. Clara took a deep breath. She looked around at the large, important room, at the hundreds of people, at the money that filled the space. I'm so glad you came, Clara said. When Dad called, he said you might not answer. He said you might be too busy. Eleanor smiled softly. I will never be too busy for you, Clara. A mother's heart is always open, even when the door is shut. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She was not a rich, important woman right then. She was just a daughter, a little girl who missed her mom. Mom, she whispered, I am so sorry. For that month, for the party, for all of it. Eleanor gently squeezed her daughter's hand. Tell me, Clara, tell me the truth. Why did you show me out? Clara looked down at her beautiful, expensive wedding dress. It was Dad. He kept telling me that if I wanted to be important, I had to stop being soft. He said you were too soft. He said you were holding me back from his world. He said your small, simple life was a weakness. He said I had to cut you off to prove to the important investors that I was a serious person. Eleanor nodded. It was exactly what she thought. Richard had always used love as a tool for control. And you believed him? Eleanor asked gently, not with anger, just with a mother's understanding. I tried to, Clara admitted. For a while. I was scared to disappoint him. I was scared to lose the importance. But mostly, Mom, I was scared that if I didn't push you away, he would push me away. This was the truth. The dark, sad truth. Clara wasn't cold. She was scared. Eleanor pulled her daughter close and held her. A long, simple, true hug. The kind of hug that had been missing for 5 years. The kind of hug that healed the biggest wounds. My love, Eleanor said, holding her tightly. You are never weak for having a soft heart. That simple heart is your greatest strength. That is what Marcus loves. He loves the girl who loved the scraped-knee photo album, not the woman who wore the diamond necklace. Clara pulled back, her eyes clear. That is why I insisted you come. Richard wanted me to marry someone else. Someone powerful, just like him. But I chose Marcus. Marcus doesn't care about the billions. He cares about the true things. When I showed him the little necklace you gave me, he understood everything. He understood you. Eleanor felt a wave of relief wash over her. Her quiet teaching had survived. Her simple love had won. Richard saw you as a distraction, Clara continued, her voice gaining strength. But I see you now as my foundation. I needed you here today to show the world, and to show Dad, that I am not just Richard's daughter. I am Eleanor's daughter. The daughter of the woman who chose dignity over a mansion. Just then, Richard walked by. He saw them holding hands. He saw the tears in Clara's eyes and the strength in Eleanor's face. He knew they were talking about him. He knew the truth was out. He stopped. He watched them. He looked defeated, not because of money, but because of loneliness. His power had bought him everything, but it had cost him the one thing he needed most, the simple love of his wife and daughter. Clara looked straight at her father. She was no longer scared. Dad, she said, clearly, firmly, Mom is staying until tomorrow. We have a lot of time to catch up, and I need you to apologize to her, not for the money, but for the dignity you took from her. Richard's face twitched. Apologizing was the hardest thing a powerful man could do. It meant admitting he was wrong. It meant admitting he had failed. He looked at Eleanor. He saw the quiet strength. He saw the woman who had walked away with nothing and returned with all the power. Eleanor did not push him. She did not beg. She just stood there, waiting for the truth. Richard took a deep breath. He looked at his beautiful daughter. He looked at the quiet woman he had lost. Eleanor, he finally managed to say. His voice was low and rough. I was wrong. I was very wrong to treat you like that. I'll let the money blind me. I thought your simplicity was a weakness. I see now that it is a strength. I am sorry. Truly sorry. Eleanor just nodded. A simple nod. The apology was not for her. It was for him. It was his first step toward finding his own dignity. Thank you, Richard, Eleanor said. She did not rush the moment. She did not demand more. She had the apology. She had her daughter back. She had won the quiet war. The war for the heart. Clara hugged her mother again. A final, beautiful hug. The music played on. The party continued. But for Eleanor, the celebration was already complete. She was home, in her daughter's heart, and she finally understood the full, immense power of walking away. A power that forced a billionaire to tremble. A power that brought a lost daughter back to the truth. The wedding party was winding down. The important people were leaving in their expensive, black cars. The music was softer now, like a sweet whisper at the end of a long day. Eleanor was standing outside, near the tall iron gates. The gates she had walked through earlier with only her dignity. She was waiting for the car Clara had arranged for her. A simple, quiet car to take her to a nice, simple hotel nearby. Richard walked out onto the stone path. He was alone. His shoulders looked heavy. He was no longer the all-powerful billionaire. He was just a tired, lonely man. He walked straight toward Eleanor. He stopped a few feet away. He didn't look at her hands to see if they were trembling. He just looked at her face. Eleanor, he said. His voice was different now. Soft, almost pleading. Richard, she replied. She did not look away. I need to ask you something, he said. It's not about money. It's not about business. Eleanor waited. She gave him the dignity of her silence. You left with nothing, he continued. You had every right to demand half of everything. Lawyers would have given it to you. You could have taken a house. You could have lived a life of luxury. But you just left the wedding ring on the bed. Why? Why did you walk away from all that money? This was a question. The question that had bothered the billionaire for 5 long years. He couldn't understand a choice that wasn't about profit. Eleanor looked at the setting sun. The colors were simple. Orange. Pink. Beautiful. Richard, she said gently. The money was cold. It was a burden. When I walked away, I didn't see an empty bank account. I saw freedom. I walked away because I want to feel warm again. The dignity I found in the small bakery and the quiet peace in my own little garden is worth more than all your billions. You can buy a big house, Richard, but you can't buy peace of heart. She paused, letting the truth sink into the space between them. I didn't take your money, she finished, because your money was the reason I lost my daughter and my peace. Taking it back would have kept me tied to the very thing that made me unhappy. Richard stood there, absorbing her words. He finally understood. His power was an illusion. Clara loves you, Richard said, his voice heavy with regret. She is a good woman. She is strong because of your simplicity. She is strong because she remembered the truth. Eleanor corrected him. You taught her how to be rich, Richard. I taught her how to be real. Richard nodded slowly. He had lost. Not the battle for the marriage, but the battle for his daughter's heart. Just then, Clara and Marcus came walking out. They were holding hands. They looked like a couple ready for a simple, true life together. Clara smiled brightly when she saw Eleanor. She ran over and hugged her tight. Mom, your car is here, Clara said. But Marcus and I were talking. We don't want you to leave. Not yet. Marcus stepped forward. Eleanor, we have a small house near the city. We bought it just for us. It has a beautiful garden space. We want you to stay there for a month. To bake with Clara again. To help her start her garden. We want to start our marriage with your blessing and your peace. This was the final offer. Not money. Not importance. Just a simple request for her presence. For her wisdom. For her simple, true love. Eleanor looked at Clara. Her heart swelled with happiness. Her daughter was truly home. She looked at Marcus. A kind man. A real man. And she looked at Richard. Richard stood aside, quiet and small. He gave Eleanor a single, small nod. A nod of acceptance. He knew Eleanor belonged with them now. I would like that very much, Eleanor said, her voice full of warmth. I would love to help my daughter grow her garden. Clara hugged her again. This time, Richard watched the hug. And for the first time in many years, a genuine, simple warmth spread through his chest. He saw the love he had thrown away, now returned through his daughter's simple happiness. Eleanor turned to Richard one last time. Goodbye, Richard. Be well. Find your peace. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't offer a kiss. She offered grace. The simple, quiet forgiveness that only a strong heart can give. Eleanor stepped into the car with Clara and Marcus. The car pulled away, driving down the long path, past the iron gates. Eleanor looked back at the large mansion. It looked cold. It looked empty. She looked at Clara and Marcus. They were holding hands, smiling. They looked full. Eleanor understood then that the greatest power in the world is not the power to buy things. It is the power to define your own worth. She had walked away from billions to find her simple dignity. And in doing so, she had won back the only thing that truly mattered, the real, whole heart of her daughter. The simple woman had made the billionaire tremble. She had shown him that love is the only true currency. And she rode off in her quiet, peaceful future, knowing that her quiet comeback was the best reward of all.